Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Fireside Chats for October 2021. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive life coach, and a co-host of this Fireside Chats podcast series. And I am here today with Lacy Frazer, my co-host, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life coach and consciousness educator today. And I want to welcome all of our listeners. Our mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation is to increase self-awareness, personal empowerment, conscious communication, transformation, and freedom in people worldwide through our Good Vibes broadcasting and consciousness teachings. We hold a core belief that these conversations are an education, and really that these conversations support personal evolution in the many rising heroes who are seeking positive change, clarity, and more meaning in their lives. We continue to grow our mission of offering Good Vibes broadcasts and podcasts by hosting and spotlighting the wisdom, insights, and stories of new voices, great messengers, and more heroes sharing the lessons, gifts, skills, and wisdom that they have gleaned in their journeys along the way. And I just want to say, if you are inspired by our podcasts and broadcasts and wish to pay it forward, we invite you to make a donation directly through our website at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. You can also purchase t-shirts and apparel from our shop at bonfire.com. Look for the link for Bonfire below this video. We aim to offer some new designs in November and December just in time for the holiday season, which I find very exciting, so keep an eye out for those. And we appreciate donations of all sizes, and we want to send out a special gratitude to our long-term committed sustainer donors who steadily support the growth of our vision and the expansion of our mission. We have many good people believing in these positive messages about change and transformation, especially in these times. And I want to thank all of our listeners for helping us to make these messages more available to people seeking more inspiration and empowerment in their lives. So here we are in a Fireside Chats in October 2021. And of course, Lacy, I'm going to invite you in just a moment because I know our listeners are at the edge of their seat. But I want you to provide that beautiful review that you do where you cover the early stages of the hero's journey and where people can listen to that review and just have an awareness of where they find themselves in their own quest for self-awareness and self-discovery, self-empowerment, healing, and wholeness. And I just want to put the little teaser there that the topic of our conversation, what we're really going to spotlight, is the next stage in the hero's journey, which is tests, allies, and enemies. So I want to welcome all of our listeners, and I want to welcome you, Lacy. Thank you for joining me.
Of course. It's always so much fun, and we're getting this right in under the wire in October.
Podcasting on Halloween.
Yes.
I mean, who else can pull that off but you and me, right? And when we think about tests, allies, and enemies, it kind of has that rhythmic like lions and tigers and bears.
Oh my.
On Halloween, right? So here we go. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Well, you know me, I always think I'm anticipating that we have new listeners for the first time today with respect to our October podcast. And I always like to do a brief summary of what we've covered in the months prior. And I won't take a lot of time to do that. But in order to bring everybody up to speed, I just want to remind our listeners that for the last several months, we have been talking about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey and the many stages of the hero's journey. And I really see the hero's journey kind of from a macro lens and kind of a micro lens. And what I mean by that, Marie, is, on the one hand, we can look at our entire life as a hero's journey. And we can also look at our life full of mini hero's journeys. And Joseph Campbell talked about the many stages of ourselves as hero, right? As we face challenges in our life, as we learn from those challenges, and as we come back to help others on their journey, on their hero's journey. So you and I talk about it in terms of the rising hero within, connecting with our own rising hero within. And that's so important in today's world, because it's all about personal empowerment and personal responsibility. And we hope, I think, here at Whole Soul School and Foundation, that these conversations provide a language for people to understand that we are all on a journey. We are on a life journey, and we are always on these mini journeys as we traverse the many challenges we face in life. So with that said, Joseph Campbell himself identified over 17 different stages of a hero's journey. Christopher Vogler, who is a Hollywood screenwriter, he distilled them into 12. And that's really what we're working with when in these conversations are the 12 stages of the hero's journey that Vogler adopted from Joseph Campbell. And so far, with each month, we've highlighted the stages in a sequential order. So the first is the ordinary world. So this is really where our hero within ourselves, or if we're thinking about movie characters, this is the world in which our hero is starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable in their ordinary world. There is sort of this vague sense that something may be missing from their lives, and they're beginning to wonder if there's something more, something beyond the bounds of their ordinary world. The hero moves into the second stage called the call to adventure. And the call to adventure essentially is, the increased awareness that there's a problem or a chance for change. And our hero is ready to move forward towards something new.
Right.
And we don't always, that call to adventure could be something really big and massive, and it could be something a lot smaller, like a job change. Or it could be a health diagnosis, we just don't know. But it's really this call to move forward in life. And then the third stage we've talked about is the refusal of the call, which is often refers to the reluctance or resistance to change, right? So this is kind of the stage in which some of our own self-doubts, our fears, our anxieties about going on the adventure, about moving out of our ordinary world start to come up and rise. And it really challenges us to say, do I really want to step forward on this adventure? And it's usually a wonderful stage, because if you're aware of it, it allows these things to kind of come up to be addressed. And then once
it's not the most comfortable stage, but it's a very rich stage.
It is. And then the fourth stage is meeting the mentor. And oftentimes this involves, meeting someone with the wisdom and experience to guide us and enable us to build confidence and courage to make this journey that we're about to make, right? So in these first 4 stages that we just discussed, those all represent this sort of initial part of the hero's journey, which involves contemplating and preparing for leaving the comfort zone to face new challenges.
Right. Maybe it's like, I don't know, we haven't used this metaphor before, but like a bird in a nest that hasn't left the nest. And I'm sure it must crawl around the nest for a while. It's its ordinary world. That's the only world it knows is the nest.
Right.
And then it probably gets up on the ledge of the nest and it fantasizes what would it be like to be like my parents who fly and soar and have all these adventures. And then the parents are nudging it more and more because it has to get kicked out of the nest at some point. And then it has to, it's practicing its wings, and it might even have a few flutters, right? But it hasn't crossed the threshold.
Right.
It still has not left the nest fully,
right,
where we're talking.
Right. And I think exactly. And I think that's a great metaphor for these first 4 stages. It's all about kind of the mental and emotional and physical preparation and contemplation, right, for for taking the big leap, the big next step to go outside of our comfort zone in whatever this journey is. And again, remember, we can superimpose this hero's journey language on our entire life story, or we can superimpose it on some minor and major decisions in our life, right? Whether it's leaving a job, deciding to retire, leaving a marriage, whatever, dealing with a health diagnosis, right?
At any point where we anticipate or are going through some kind of change, this same conversation and this language applies.
Yes. Yeah. So we've dealt with our anxieties, we've met the mentor, and then stages 5 and 6 are really about kind of gaining what we need to deal with the challenges. Okay, so we're actually going to take an action step. So in stage 5, which we talked about last month, we crossed the threshold. We've now taken one step beyond our ordinary world. We're not turning back, and we are ready to start on the journey. And as we move into stage 6, which is the topic for today, which is tests, allies, and enemies. This is kind of like a catch-all stage that really stands for the smaller trials and tribulations that may arise, or the making of friends who can support us in our journey, and also the challenges of dealing with those who present obstacles on our journey. So as we make friends and as we meet enemies, essentially, and as we are put through tests on the journey, the smaller tests, it's actually preparing us for the really big kind of quote unquote ordeal in when we get up to like stage 8 and 9, that we're going to have to face. So it's
and we're also there's a strength that's coming from, because in the first few stages you're testing it out. It kind of, for some people, it might feel fun, or that you're going on a journey and you're going to grow in some way. You're definitely evaluating, and you're more aware of your ordinary world. But this also, in stages kind of 5 and 6, as we're labeling it today anyway, crossing the threshold and meeting the allies, tests, and enemies, right? There is this also acknowledgement to ourselves that we are okay at some level of not knowing what we're facing, not knowing.
Oh my God, that is the biggest point. I'm so glad you brought that up. So keep talking, because that is we've accepted the uncertainty.
We've accepted the uncertainty at some level, and we know that uncertainty actually is what's lining the path. We don't even know where the path is leading us, but we know we're walking with uncertainty instead of someone who otherwise might feel like, hey, wait, I'm in the wrong place. I took the wrong fork in the road. I shouldn't even be here. No, you've done some of that already. Not to say that waves of that don't come through your thought forms, but there's something that happens when you're at this stage in the journey that you can't turn back. You don't know where you're going. But you got to walk right now with the uncertainty, and that, even in its own way, I don't know if we're going to talk about that, but it can be its own ally, it can be an enemy. The uncertainty, the conversations we have with the uncertainty can be, friendly and be fortifying us in some way. And it can also, we can really probably also ratchet up our own doubts. Like I always think about the cowardly lion in the Wizard of Oz.
Don't go into that yet, because we're going to really go into that one.
Oh, I want to. So, okay. So let me just make my point that we have accepted at some level that we are on the road of uncertainty, right? And that this is the right path, and that we are going to find out and discover more things if we have the courage to keep going.
Yeah, and I think you said the right path, and I almost would challenge you on that, the word right, because I think that...
Well, it means a lot of things to a lot of people.
It does, and that's why I want to bring that up and just highlight that we haven't accepted it's the right path, but we've accepted it's the path that we are choosing to move forward on at this time.
Correct. That's what I meant. It's the right path for right now.
It's the right path for right now. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And accepting a level of uncertainty is huge. because in the refusal of the call stage, a lot of our anxieties and fears have to do with not, am I going to have control of this situation? Am I going to have certainty? How do I know if I'm going in the right direction? Maybe I'm going in the wrong direction, So that's all come up prior to this, but we've really kind of dialed down inside our decision and our commitment to move forward, whatever it looks like.
Well, and those mentors, it might be more than one, but in our life are also the mirrors to us, the believing that we can do these things, even if the smaller understanding of ourselves doesn't think so.
Right.
So here we are in the realm of the uncertainty, kind of this mysterious place, this mysterious path, right? And we've got some of the messages of our mentor inside us. We're carrying that too, right?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Right. And that's helping to propel us forward into this more unknown territory.
Well, in fact, some would say that it's really the mentor that has helped provide help us kind of grow our own confidence, helps us feel reassured that there's somebody out there kind of watching and guiding and supporting, and that we're not totally alone, you know. And that's a really important piece.
And I know we have a lot to talk about, but I have to say these things, Lacy. I must. I just must.
I know all about that.
Okay, so from the lens of which we're talking about this through this learnings of who's the teacher who put together the 12?
Christopher
Vogler has identified that. But you were talking also about there's this kind of comfort that comes to the hero at this stage of the journey, that it is mysterious, it is unknown, it is uncertain, but they feel their mentor walking with them. But that's often a mentor from this realm, like a human being, right?
It could be.
It could be, or resources or something that's giving us a strength, and we're calling on that energy, right? But I must point out, for some people, this is also where they're calling in God, where they're calling in their spirituality, where they're calling on their angels or their guides, right? That they're not alone in the journey, but they're confident that they can walk with that support in whatever way they perceive that to be.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
I think we're clear.
Okay.
Okay. So really, it's this stage that tests allies and enemies, that our hero, ourselves, or the hero in a movie, which we're going to bring up some examples. This is the stage they really endure tests of strength, right, or possibly tests of will, and where they meet friends and allies, and where they also come face to face with foes or enemies. Okay, and this is the period in the journey which really helps define the hero's relationship with all of these other aspects and characters in their own journey. Okay, and this is all going to make a lot of sense when we really talk about Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz or Harry Potter, right? But I just want to make sure we have a pretty clear understanding of what this stage is about. For us as hero, this could be the stage in which we're dealing with little setbacks that may discourage us, right, along the way. Or we might find new and creative ways to enlist the support of others. We really may have to this may be the stage where we find who is really, truly, authentically supportive of us, and who is actually saying they are, but aren't, depending on the journey. And then this also may be the stage where we are dealing with difficult people, difficult circumstances, right? This is sort of the enemy or the foe piece. But the bottom line, Marie, is what's so beautiful about this particular stage that I can really feel energetically is it's all for the learning. It's all to increase the awareness inside of ourselves, the awareness of the gifts that we can learn from other people. So many of us see challenges as problems, as opposed to opportunities for growth and opportunities to become more empowered.
Right. I mean, some people have lived their lives with lenses of it's just one conflict after another, one problem after another, and that there is nothing good coming out of that, and life will always be a series of those challenges. But I think also something else that I feel in here, you are talking about the gifts that are in the richness of this process. It's also a time where the hero realizes nobody's fixing this for them. Right?
Right.
They are the one walking the journey, the path, right? You could I always have an image of somebody like going and they're walking like at night in it's windy, and there's bat caws or something, and there's crows cawing, and then there's owls, and they're on this path, and they might want to get out their cell phone and call their sister or their cousin or their best friend or their partner, their spouse, their mom. Someone come fix this because I'm scared. But the hero and the hero's journey, this is a part of the journey where we do walk this. We carry the mentor inside us, but we are walking this inside ourselves, or else it's somebody else's hero's journey.
Right.
We have to keep remembering this is our own.
And we are 100% responsible for it.
Right.
Right. And it doesn't mean that we can't have help. It doesn't mean, but it does mean that we have got to find the power, the skill, the ability, the fortitude, the strength, the persistence, the willingness,
we're calling up all those resources with the support of people that believe in us, support us, love us, but there's something inside ourselves that we're partnering with ourselves in a different way than we ever have before.
Yes, and I mean, this hero's journey gives such a wonderful language for this process.
Absolutely,
for this partnering with the self, which I think is just. It's just the answer to everything to me, but that's just me.
Yes, no, it is a broader conversation than most people tend to have with themselves, and I'm grateful. Again, for me, this is a springboard. This is these are identifiable stages, but they don't necessarily one right after the other, and you don't have to say, exactly where am I in the hero's journey, but you can feel these flavors in your journey, and you can pay attention. So when a lion or a tiger or a bear jumps out of those woods at you don't have to be totally spooked and run all the way back to the ordinary world.
Right.
You get to say, a couple, crows crowing. That doesn't scare me, right? A couple things happening. It's actually part of what's building the bridge that's actually laying the path for you. It is required. These things are required in the hero's journey.
All of these experiences are strengthening you as a human being. They're strengthening you as a spiritual being having a human experience.
Definitely.
There's nothing that happens in our life that doesn't do that. If you can have that perspective about it.
That's why it helps to have these languages and this language in these podcasts. Right. So for all of us, when we can know, okay, I suppose snakes might cross my path, right? Or whatever the things that might elicit fear inside us, if we know this is actually part of the process and I am going to keep going.
Right.
So here we go.
Yeah. So I think I think both of us are really saying that we want our listeners to understand that this particular stage is all about embracing the tests and reframing the challenges into opportunities to learn and grow, right? And gain skills and knowledge and wisdom. Why are we needing to grow and learn and gain skills and knowledge and wisdom? Because all of that is going to help us further along the path. Because later in the journey, we often come to a massive ordeal that we must face. And you know what? We're not really that scared of it anymore because we've just spent the whole preceding stages learning what we needed to and building the skills and resilience to face whatever it is we've needed to face.
That's brilliant. Yes.
So Marie, I think probably one of the greatest stories of all time that so clearly illustrates this particular stage of the hero's journey is Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. I mean, we refer to this story in every stage that we talk about, but really kind of the meat and potatoes of her journey is full of tests. she meets the obvious friends, which we'll talk about, and the obvious enemies. And she grows as a person through this entire journey until it's time to actually really face what she needs to face. Right? So let's break this down just a little bit. Clearly Dorothy has some very obvious allies, right? This is something I thought was interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it this way until I really kind of read into this a bit more. But who do you think was Dorothy's greatest ally on this journey? Any guesses?
I have to think about that because I have a sense that that's a bigger picture question. Or maybe I'm overthinking it, but I don't know. Although I feel like there's something about the Scarecrow is particularly allied with her.
Well, of course, the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion are her allies. But do you know who her biggest ally in the whole story is? Toto.
Oh, Toto.
Toto. And if you really zoom out and understand the story, it was Toto who ran away from Miss Gulch, who forced Dorothy to. I mean, there's many interesting things and behaviors that Toto engaged in. That it was really Toto that the whole time that
leads her.
That exactly. Some think that Toto was the call to adventure. Right?
That's
because
interesting.
She was looking for Toto and wasn't in the storm cellar when the tornado came. Right?
Right.
And so there's a lot more there, but I just want to. At this stage of the game, I just want to say that Toto is, I think, one of Dorothy's biggest allies. And then, of course, we have the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion and Scarecrow. And then, of course, we have Glinda, the good, her mentor.
Right.
Right. And, and ultimately, the wizard, who he kind of transforms from being sort of bad and scary to being the one that ultimately kind of works with her to try to get her home, but doesn't really work in the end. But these are all allies on her journey. These are people who support her, who love her, who are learning from her, and who she is also learning a great deal from. Right?
Exactly. There's some vulnerability in this journey, and she's willing to be vulnerable with them, and then she's also strong. It kind of, they each take their turn.
Right.
One is freaking out or having a fear, panic of some kind,
Right.
and then the others are strong for them. But it's through these allies where they strengthen each other when they're feeling weak.
Well, and I actually think what you're really ultimately saying is, we know Dorothy as our heroine, so to speak, in this large journey, but the truth is every one of those allies were having their own hero's journey.
Correct.
Right? So the Tin Man was journeying to understand that he has a heart, and the Scarecrow that he has a brain, and the Cowardly Lion that he has courage.
And that's true when someone in their lives decides to take this journey. There are others around them. I don't know that we put them all in the category of enemy, but there are some who see this path opening and they're like, okay, they don't understand it, and they'll be back on the sidelines. But those that choose to take the journey as allies grow as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, beautiful. Well said. Yes. And then, of course, we have our enemies or our foes who, petrified all of us when growing up. But we had Miss Gulch, who, of course, doubled as the Wicked Witch.
Right.
We have the witch's monkeys. And then I would also add in, enemies such as fire. Fire was an enemy to the Scarecrow, right?
That's true.
Rain was the enemy of the Tin Man because it would rust him.
Yes. And water to the witch.
And, huge water to the witch. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So enemies don't always have to be people. Right. They can be things, circumstances, weather patterns, etc. So the enemy of a captain of a ship is a massive storm, is a hurricane, is a water tornado, a cyclone,
Right.
So we know what an enemy is, right? And we can easily pick out our allies and our enemies and see them sort of play out through her journey. And then, of course, we have a multitude of tests, right, for Dorothy. Dorothy travels and she and her friends endure a multitude of tests on this journey, right? So, in other words, she faces the balls of fire that threaten Scarecrow, right? They face the poppy fields that put them to sleep. They face the horrible, scary monkeys.
I still have like some nightmares about those monkeys. I might have stopped dreaming at that point. Like at night, at least, I vision and dream that way by day, but at night, I think
your subconscious shut it down.
Those monkeys were pretty spooky to me, I have to say.
And then, of course, we mentioned the rain that threatens the Tin Man. And then, of course, remember when Dorothy's locked in the castle, right?
Yes.
And she has to be, she's separated from her family, and she doesn't know if the witch is going to kill her, and she's got the hourglass that she's contending with, the deadline.
But the other heroes are having to step up.
Right, exactly. So, go ahead.
Well, it's all these things. What I love is that I love energetic layerings. Because it's not just one path, and it's not just one task, and it's not one interaction or one catalyst. It's a series and sequence of unfoldments that are unfolding. I love that word. I love unfoldment, unfolding, because it's a great neutral word that there's not a lot of attachment to the things that are happening. There's an awareness, there's an appreciation even. I have deep appreciation for my life's unfoldment, but I'm not wedded to it, and I don't have to have it a certain way. It's a flowing type of energy, and you let it manifest. You're participating in it as a co-creation versus, we all know that rigidity where we want Control. It to be this, right? And we want each person in our life, they have to do it this way. And there could be the micromanagement of the hero's journey. And I don't really think that's the true essence of the hero's journey. It's not about controlling all the circumstances and everybody else around you so you can arrive the victor of a journey that you have now scripted and controlled and made everybody behave a certain way. Right? The true hero allows the unfoldment to manifest. And that's what I'm saying. Like when she gets captured by the witch, right? And the other heroes have to step up.
Right.
It's amazing in the layerings when you allow other people to play their part that you don't even yet know what it is, but you're trusting it is happening. It is part of this process. If you can allow other people in your life to do what they need to be doing, and you keep listening for what you need to be doing, it is extraordinary when all that dovetails and converges back together, especially in the times where everybody has chosen growth. Right? Sometimes of a whole team of allies, you might have one person defect, right? Or regress, or just kind of bow out because they don't want to go the distance. They've kind of maxed out on their courage or whatever it might be. And you have people fall away in the journey. We don't see that in The Wizard of Oz. I haven't seen it in so long. I'm trying to think. Does anybody seem to basically I quit and come back at the end? I think they all are dealing with their fears and their foibles and their weaknesses, and also shoring each other up with strength and believing in each other. It helps when you have a group. It can help like that. So I guess I'm just talking about all the multi-layerings that make a journey so rich. And if you can trust that too as part of the process, and really recognizing that I'm distinguishing also right here is that the journey isn't about controlling everything. So you have a nice, neat little script of the story that you want to tell to yourself the way you like it. The hero really does end up opening and evolving to allow what needs to happen. The monkeys do come out of nowhere a couple times and scare them or carry somebody off. Is that what they do? Do they capture Toto?
The monkeys, yep.
Okay, so again, Toto comes back in, and I think she goes in search of rescuing Toto.
Right.
I don't think she was going to go look for the witch.
Right.
She was headed to find the wizard, right?
Right.
So, again, that Toto comes in, we think, at least.
No, Toto does. I mean, there's
captured.
like an amazing analysis of who Toto really is and the role that Toto plays throughout the film. So I just think you're bringing it up again.
Oh, we should go back to that in another podcast then and delve a little deeper.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that if she was controlling, she would have had Toto on a leash.
Right.
Is there a leash anywhere?
Yeah, that is a good point. I hadn't thought about that. No, but there's no harness.
There's no harness. No, and she doesn't have any dog treats or anything. So this is part of that, I'm saying, that unfoldment that has to happen organically and naturally. And Toto has to get taken so that she then rises in her courage and goes and faces the foe or the enemy that otherwise she might have wanted to avoid.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, I keep having the word lens or perspective come up in my consciousness because I think if there's anything that anybody could take from this particular podcast or any of our podcasts about the hero's journey, it's the importance of simply looking at your life and everything in it, every interaction, every experience, every challenge, every joy, every part of your life, which is in constant unfoldment all the time, look at it through the lens of the journey or of the adventure, understanding that there isn't a person that you meet that doesn't have a role to play in the unfoldment of your journey. There isn't an experience that you don't have. I don't care if it's just running into somebody in the grocery store or, recently we've been dealing with a busted pipe under the sink in our kitchen. Even little things like that, they play a role. They cause us to think outside our own box. They challenge our thinking. They increase our awareness. And if I had a wish for anybody who listens to us chat in this way, it's that you start to realize that everything is purposeful. And when you look through this lens, the increase in not just awareness and empowerment, but almost compassion for yourself as a human doing this thing called life.
That is a journey of uncertainty.
Yes. And when you can embrace that, when you can accept that, and when you can allow it,
alchemizes into a sense of adventure. Right? When you're not the empowered hero of your own journey, it is the lions, tigers, and bears scenario. But when you understand and you alchemize, and for some people they don't know what that word alchemy is, but when you shift your perspective and you neutralize your fear about uncertainty, and it's the vital elements of the hero's path. The path can't form for you if you don't step into the uncertainty that forms the path. Now you are looking through the lenses of adventure, and that is the empowered hero. Right? And it's very, very powerful. And I wanted to add on to what you said, where everything you start to see, you begin to see at least, or you become willing to see that everything is purposeful. And I can break that down into 3 words, which is everything has meaning. Everything is meaningful, whether it's, I can even just say, a gust of wind. How many times have we seen shows, especially children's shows, where somebody's walking along and their hat blows off because a big gust of wind comes at just the right time and the hat tumbles, and then they meet somebody on the road and they have this conversation, they have this adventure. There's all of our stories that have been written, most of the successful ones have these elements because it's so universal inside us. But when we get off the path of cultivating and nourishing and allowing these growth experiences and these lessons that do empower us, then we are put back into a little box and we find our way back in the ordinary world, and we wake up from dreams as if to did that even happen? And you're right back where you started from, right? But the hero's journey will always come calling. And when you can begin to see, and it will call you into some level of uncertainty where you just don't know the answers to what is before you, but you go through it. And when you can see this has meaning, this is significant, and life gets to be a whole lot more fun. And it takes the fear out of things, even if there's discomfort. You can be uncomfortable without being fearful.
So important. So true.
Yes. There's so many aspects to all of this that we could talk about. We should have a whole podcast about that. Just you can be uncomfortable without being fearful, because a lot of people don't know how to walk that that fine line, right? Just right on the leading edge of their own creation.
Well, I think you can learn to become not fearful and comfortable with being uncomfortable and comfortable with uncertainty when you begin to understand that everything that you're walking is teaching you about courage and fortitude and strength and persistence and
it
resilience.
All becomes meaningful.
Yes.
And many people can look back, anyone listening right now, you can look back over a situation in your life, and I know we'll get back to talking a couple more things because I know you have some more points to make, but we can all do that quick review of something in our childhood or in college or somewhere where we review something from the past, and you can look at it now after 10, 20, however many years, 30 years of perspective, and say, that was not a fun time in my life. It might have been somebody you dated. It might have been, something you experienced with a teacher or professor. You might have experienced shame at some point in time, or you made a choice and you were trying to hide that from people. Whatever it is, it can be unpleasant circumstances where reviewing that again doesn't feel good, but you can look a little deeper and say, but if that person hadn't shown up in my life at that time, I might have missed X. They were the beginning of me realizing, that I can't fix other people, that I can't control somebody else in my life to have what I want. If you look deeper, the lessons are there. And some people haven't even done some of that. I'm not talking about getting stuck in the rearview mirror and doing a lot of that. But I am saying often until you uncover this language, you don't understand the gems that were already there.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And then you begin to create the gems going forward instead of having to wait for life to pass you by, for you to look back at it from a decades-long review process where it's always better when you can do it in the moment. It's always better when you can do it in the present moment.
Yes, do it in the present moment. And now that's sort of where you take a turn to become the creator of your life. You become the creator of what's to come, in a way. You start writing the story in a different way.
Right. And that you begin to know yourself as the author of the story instead of even in Dorothy in the story, I don't think they make that point very clear that she is the one that's creating all of her circumstances. But in the illustration of the tests, allies and enemies, and the path and the foes and the challenges and facing fear and doing it anyway, it's a great, great story. But obviously for our listeners, there are countless stories that we can pull out examples.
Well, nearly every feature film has this.
Has these elements.
There are some very obvious ones. I like to refer to Harry Potter. I like to refer to It's a Wonderful Life with George Bailey. And obviously the superhero movies, the Marvel movies, the DC comic movies, they're all about the heroes and the journeys that they go on. Usually it's to save somebody or to save the world or whatever. But these are, are all of our feature films, many novels. This is the experience of the human living the human life.
Well, and this is what souls crave. I always bring in the higher spiritual perspective, but souls crave expansion. They truly crave the expansion, and souls, when they're in non-physical form, can't be having a cane or a superhero talent or trait or something, or climbing tall mountains, or jumping out of the sky, because we don't have the physical form to inhabit, to have these experiences. To me, and from many people that I've studied and listened to, this is why we incarnate. We incarnate to have these experiences, to expand the soul, to know the divinity in ourselves ever deeper. So the hero's journey, I love that aspect of it, because there's a spiritual aspects of us that are having these human experiences, right? And the hero's journey speaks to more the human experience side of it, of the lessons that we're growing through. But I love how my friend Paul Panzica talks about the heroic soul. And the heroic soul, I would say, is always seeking these expansions and these experiences in that multi-layered way that a lot of people aren't even attuned to. So for some people, it's a massive journey to find that there's meaning in life at all, right?
Yes.
The quest for meaning. And then when we go along the journey and you're in it for a while and you learn the language and you go on several adventures and you've got layers and layers of allies and enemies in your journeys, and you're still coming through those journeys, you're still growing, you're still learning, there's this spiritual expansion that continues to happen, because that's ultimately we're getting back to having a conversation with the deeper parts of ourselves and the divinity inside us that wants to expand to become creators like the Creator, right? So it's a multi-layered journey, and also it becomes a whole lot more fun when you start to uncover these things. And I know for some people, we have quite a wide audience who listens to these podcasts. And I think I love that about Whole Soul School and Foundation, because you can have people who are just starting out, who've never heard of the hero's journey. They don't know anything about the things that we're talking about. And they acquire the language, because remember, the conversations are the education, right? It's educational just to listen to these conversations. But then there's other people who've been in the journey for quite some time, and they're listening for something that's new, some lens of perception that they haven't seen their life adventures or their soul's adventures through. And so I love that we are speaking to all of that today. And I know that we are going to talk about one more hero.
Yeah, and I we don't have to spend a lot of time on this because I know we are rounding out our time. But I will, of course, bring up Harry Potter, because I just
you have to.
Other than Dorothy, I just don't know of another human being or another wizard character. Thank you. Really the story that illustrates the hero's journey more. And we're specifically talking about Tess' allies and enemies, and of course, Harry makes it, he goes on a whole journey to get from his ordinary world under the stairs to the call to adventure is to get him to Hogwarts and to really understand and connect with himself as a wizard, which he also there are many aspects that show us that he didn't really want to be a wizard, that was in the refusal of the call for him, and then of course he meets his mentors in Hagrid and Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore, right? And then he crosses the threshold. By the time he gets to Hogwarts, he has now crossed the threshold. And it's the journey to Hogwarts where he meets three of his main allies. I mean, he has many allies because, of course, everybody loves Harry Potter except for his enemies, right?
I think that's the case for all of us. Many love us except for those who don't. It's really powerful and insightful to say that.
So profound,
right?
So his friends Ron and Hermione and Neville. Obviously, these are three of the characters who are his greatest allies. And then we've already mentioned he has Dumbledore and Hagrid and many of the other faculty members at Hogwarts, Professor McGonagall and
the mentors, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And even of those professors and teachers, there are enemies among them.
Yes.
Right?
There are. And then, there are the obvious enemies. One, the number one enemy for him is Voldemort. But he also meets several that might be considered foes before he ever meets Voldemort, right? He, in Draco Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle, and certainly for a while we believe Snape is one of those enemies, right?
Right. And even Dobby, that house elf, he comes along and doesn't seem like he's an ally because he actually loves Harry Potter so much. He doesn't want him to go to school that season, right? That year.
Right.
So he keeps sabotaging
that's a good one.
all of Harry's attempts to get there.
Right.
And he keeps figuring out that it's Dobby who's messing with all kinds of things and causing him all kinds of tests and conflicts and challenges.
Right.
But when in fact Dobby is another one that may have loved him the most.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it takes getting into the journey to truly ascertain and discern who are the allies. It's not just everybody who makes you feel good.
So important.
Your truest allies may not, or your truest mentor may not be who says, you look fabulous, right? You're so smart. Oh, you're just so fabulous at whatever it is that you do. That's different than the true ally that when the rubber meets the road, you often find out who truly are your allies
Yes.
and who truly are not.
Yes.
And that's where the tests of strength and faith and fortitude come into the whole mix. And it might be some unlikely characters in your journey that may have either been your greatest allies or helpers or supporters. And,
That's such a good point. So I don't, again, we're not going to, this story spans 7 novels and 7 movies. And so we're not going to go through it all, but just let's talk about a few of the tests, right? Harry and his ally friends have to meet. They come face to face with Hagrid's 3-headed dog, Fluffy, right? And they have to do a journey to deal with that situation, right?
Right.
Also, early on in the film, they have to face the challenge of a giant troll, and they do that together. And then, of course, there's the Quidditch game, and then also there are 3 important there's wizarding chess, right? At the end of the first film, at the end of the first book, wizarding chess. That's a all of these, especially in Harry Potter, are very distinct and unique and big challenges, big tests, and they all are the setup for when he finally does meet Voldemort face to face,
the ultimate enemy,
head to head, the ultimate enemy.
Yep.
This is the enemy that killed his parents. Right? So all of these tests that led up to that have helped Harry grow his strengths as a wizard.
Right, and who he is in book 7 is not who he started out to be in book 1.
Right.
But he goes on this journey where he's strengthening and discovering more of the truer parts of himself, his origins, his abilities, his path, his purpose, who he really is. But they have all these tests that they go through in each book in that series,
right?
It's so amazing. And I love the cast of characters that J.K. Rowling puts in there. And the language, it's a whole other language. She creates a whole other world. But boy, can we learn from that. Of course, people can just look at it as a form of entertainment.
Right.
Or you can look at it with deeper, more spiritual eyes, or at least more conscious lenses. And you can see, I see aspects of this hero's journey coming to life. You can even rewatch movies that we've all long seen. We could all watch Wizard of Oz again, and we might see something differently. I would see Toto differently.
Right.
And I know you didn't go into that much deeper today, but just planting that seed in my awareness, it makes me think of the Dobby characters. There's these characters that aren't the main character. I don't know what they're called in the movie making or the book writing. Are they supporting characters? Right? But they play a critical role in the leading character's development and the story's unfoldment. And without them, it would be a different story. And when you can learn to recognize, and this is also part of seeing through the lenses that everything has meaning. You might have, when I was growing up, I didn't pay attention to Toto as much. But now that you're saying that, I can feel Toto's with her from the beginning, and Toto returns with her as they are changed at the end. And
just remember, this total not even a segue, sidebar maybe is what I'm looking for. Toto, remember, they're in the balloon about to leave with the wizard, and Toto leaps out of the basket to chase a cat. And so Dorothy has to leave the basket. Who knows if Dorothy had floated off with the wizard in the balloon, if she ever would have made it back to Kansas.
Right. Because we never see where he goes.
No, but last time he was in a balloon, he ended up in Oz.
Right? You can't trust that wizard. Right?
Or the balloon. Toto was way wiser than anybody.
Right? Wow.
Was that the universe? Was that, et cetera. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Right? That's so true. Yeah. Right? And just when you think all hope is lost, often that's when the greatest gems in the journey do come in. If you can also stand in your strength, stand in your power, and know that there's always another way, which is what you said in the beginning about the trick of language when you would say it's the right path.
Yes.
There's a right path for right now. And she did get on that balloon, and then that wasn't the right path about a few minutes later. There was another path that had to do with some shoes.
Right.
Right? But Toto knew that inner GPS led her there. So this is, you have to go through this journey, and you have to be willing to allow the layers and almost see it as a layer. So the plumbing issue that you were describing earlier, that's just another layer, a plumbing layer, along with some others that we faced. Everybody has had house repairs over the years, but we don't look at house repairs just like basic, human repairs, right? We know there's some message in that, right?
Yeah, well, you and I understand now through our own many, many heroes' journeys that there are messages
in every
everything.
Experience, right?
Really, in every experience, and whether that is with nature, if a hawk flies by us, or ants, we're having an ant problem right now. We believe that nature and these animals bring messages to us, and we always look it up and we say, let's pay attention to this. What is it? We're here.
And we listen for a few days, and we listen for what is mine to do in the situation. What is my lesson here? And also, oftentimes when we'll extract the lesson, the universe is like, oh, they're getting it. And another door opens.
Right.
And when you're not paying attention, you're resisting or fighting or avoiding or whatever, somehow you might just wrestle with that same issue in like a boss, and then in a child, and then it's somebody at the grocery store, and gosh, it just keeps showing up. And why don't they just leave me alone? Right? Oh, but the common denominator is you, the hero of your own story. And when you can turn to those really uncomfortable things that keep showing you something, and you say, okay, what is it? What am I not seeing to move forward and to release that all these things I keep recreating in my life,
right,
which just ties you up in knots, and you are progressing on your journey, but there's more progression for you to have. But the universe is certainly willing, if you want to go around like a track, about 20, 30 times, you can do that.
No,
the universe is patient, the universe is persistent, and it'll steadily wait until you extract the marrow of the experience.
Well, and you make the decision not to be in the hamster wheel anymore.
Right?
At some level, in whatever aspect of life you're really on the hamster wheel about.
Right. And so, but it does take speaking to yourself, or managing your thoughts, or creating and realizing that you're powerful, talking to a mentor, getting other perspectives, calling in other resources. It's whatever Einstein said, that you can't transcend the problems of today with the same thinking that gets you there. A lot of people in the ordinary world keep using the very same tools that are kind of exhausted. They might even have had an expiration date 5 years before, and you didn't pick up on that.
Right.
That you need new tools in your toolbox. This is that kind of time. Harry is always discovering new abilities inside himself. He's always able to go to the next level of courage, or just facing fear and doing it anyway, and he's got a little bit of that unconventional or rogue element in himself, where he's not supposed to use the invisibility cloak for people who watch the Harry Potter films, but he puts it on and he goes and does things at hours he's not supposed to be out of his dorm room, but he ultimately solves the problems and rises above the conflicts and saves the day.
Right.
So, and I like that they have that infirmary that they can fix anything. I'm ready for that in all of our lives too, so we can face fear more courageously, because we know we can just go back to, is it Madame Pomfrey?
Yeah,
is that her name?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember if that's her name, but anyway, it might take a couple weeks to regrow a bone or something, but you can.
Right.
And let's all intend that like that's coming for us, is that there's, we may get to a level of human consciousness where it's not out of the realm of possibility that that's even possible. But we have a few heroes' journeys to go on, and especially people are asleep in their life. And there's a lot of people sleeping in the ordinary world, because that's where they perceive it to be safe. That's where security is.
That's right.
In this small little box that's predictable, and that they know it's familiar. And if these last couple of years have done anything for all of us, it's shaken us up into, we're all living in an unknown world right now. We're all living at the precipice or the edge of change to some degree in our life. And some people may try to control and micromanage while there's even more uncertainty in the world. They've made their boxes tighter. But in some ways, what we'd invite people is that these, Dorothy and Toto and Harry Potter and all the characters that we see in our stories and that we have on our podcasts, a lot of the people whose voices you hear and will soon be hearing more of are people who were willing to let go of the lenses through which they perceive their ordinary world to rise into something much richer and stepping more fully into a hero's journey of giving back in service in some way and sharing the gems along the journey.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's actually a really beautiful place to end, Marie, because I think you really, it's just, I just would reiterate that it's incredibly empowering to understand our life as a whole, as this hero's journey, and to embrace the many, many journeys throughout our life as purposeful, right? And preparatory for and contributing to our growth, to face the challenges of the human journey and to also grow our soul, kind of like you were saying earlier.
Yes.
And so I think we've done a good job today with the tests, allies, and enemies, and using Dorothy and Harry Potter to just sort of illustrate what that may look like. And we would ask our listeners to think about that in your life and think outside the box, like you were saying. The allies and the enemies, they could be wolf in sheep's clothing, or they could be sheep in wolf's clothing, or they could just be sheep and just be wolves.
Right? That's true too. If you really are in the ordinary world, they are just sheep and wolves, and there's nothing more to say about that. That's the end of the conversation. But for other people who are ready for the hero's journey to lift off the page and not just be something that you read in other people's stories, that you have to go to the movies or read books to experience an adventure yourself, right? When you're willing to have one yourself, it becomes a whole different journey. Yeah. And so, Lacy, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank our listeners. I did want to leave with one quote. It's not specifically about the hero's journey, but it is kind of about friends and allies and enemies. And we had talked earlier today about there is power in the present moment when the hero can be present in their own experience and listening for their inner compass or navigational system, and they're on the right path at the right time, and they're listening for what is theirs to do, right? This is a quote from Eckhart Tolle that we shared in our social media post that says, "Always work with the present moment, not against it. Make it your friend and ally, not your enemy. This will miraculously transform your whole life." And that's where they say, like, the power for all of us is in the present moment, to know that we have choice. And one of the biggest choices we have is the ability to perceive our lives through the lenses that we choose. And nothing outside you. There can be all kinds of allies and enemies around you, or mentors, or detractors, or judgers, or whatever it might be. But you are the one who gets to choose how you're perceiving your life. And when you know that, you become more of the creator of your life. And this is also something we want to seed in people's awareness. So that's why we love the hero's journey, right? Whether you see it from the human evolution perspective or you see it much more of a soul expansion in this multi-layered way. It is in the present moment that we do have the power of choice. And we have the power of choice of how we're going to deal with the Dobbies and, these other supporting characters, and even facing the enemies or the witches or whatever. And I think that's very significant in our time because it's so easy to be anywhere else but the present moment. But the present moment is really where your power is. So we invite people to tap into that power inside themselves. We are right at the threshold of closing out October 2021 and, entering November 2021. We're almost at the end of 2021. There's a lot more learning and growing and heroing, if we make it a verb, to do in these last couple of months of the year. And it's really the power of the present moment. And acquiring this language and walking with podcasts like these. Always like to remind our listeners, we're not just on YouTube and where you can see videos. We're also on Spotify and iHeartRadio and Apple iTunes. And other places where you can listen to us easily while you're out journeying. So if you have time in the car or whatever, I know some people who take road trips and they'll download from Spotify a number of our podcasts, and literally you can be journeying with us talking about the journey. I mean, that doesn't get any better than that.
Doesn't get any better.
Seriously. So we invite people to visit us at wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. We do have updates coming along with our website that should be posted soon. We are a small nonprofit, and I just would say again, everybody's donations are supporting us to continue to build the infrastructure, and I would say the scaffolding to launch at a bigger level and to do more of these things. But we invite you to see several of the podcasts. I think there's 3 or 4 podcasts already out this month. This will make possibly a 5th. And we have visions of, really being, a bit bigger than we are now, but it takes staff and it takes resources and it takes finances and it takes all those things. So we really thank the people who give one-time donations, because there is no donation that truly is too small. Everything helps us. And we really want to thank the people who are our loyal sustainer donors, because we just can't even measure what that does for the messages for Whole Soul School and Foundation and our continued growth of implementing and empowering this much bigger vision. So until next time, Lacy and I wish you blessings, and we'll see you real soon.